Hi, it's Howard, coming to you live from the campus of Cool School University.
Welcome to Gems of Knowledge with your host, David Bellman and Justin Kroll. Each week, our experts will answer all of your jewelry questions with Rachel Putney, our social media maven, who will relay your questions to our experts. And now, here's your host, David Bellman.
Hi, I'm David Bellman, and welcome to another episode of Gems of Knowledge, where we're discussing cruise line disasters, basically, I guess is the best way to put it.
I agree.
Yep. In this particular segment, we're going to go through the terms and conditions that Elaine found on the back of her receipt after she got home. And I just want to give you a little background on the story, just because I know a lot of you may be tuning in just to this one particular episode, not having seen the others. But Elaine was a very nice woman who went on a cruise with her husband, having the time of their life, and they were told by the cruise company, you know what, we've got all these great deals for jewelry that you can buy. And they put her through all these seminars and told her what a great deal she was going to get. And they drove her to a particular jewelry store, and when she got there, they put all the lights and all the pressure and on her to purchase a ring that cost her in total almost $30,000. And it wasn't until she got home that she realized that the ring that she had purchased was worth maybe $10,000 or close to it. And then when she called the cruise line and said, you know what, I'm really not happy with this purchase, they said, why don't you read the terms and conditions on the back of the receipt? And she did. And when she did, and she brought the item to me to look at, we went through it. And I have to tell you, it's the craziest set of terms and conditions I've ever seen on a receipt. And it's so complicated, and there's so much in here that we thought it would be good to bring in a lawyer to help go through all of it, so that when you're on a cruise and someone hands you a receipt, flip it over and take a look at what's on the back, because we're going to take time now to show you exactly what that means. So I'd like to introduce Dave Glod. He is part of the law firm out of Boston, Rich and May. So Dave, how you doing?
Great. How are you guys?
Good. Really appreciate you coming on to our show. Of course, we have the lovely Rachel with us here today. And we are going to ask you to help us understand everything that's on this terms and conditions. And but first, what was your initial impression when I sent this over to you? I'd like to get your initial thoughts.
Well, David, it struck me as a pretty heavy-handed contract. I mean, it seems designed in some senses to make it very difficult for a consumer to get their money back under almost any circumstances.
Have you ever seen anything quite like it? I mean, you've been an attorney for quite some time, and I'm sure you showed it around the office to some of the other folks in there. What were the overall thoughts?
It's unusual. It's really slanted, it seems, in favor of and against the consumer.
Understood. Well, no question about that, in my opinion. And I think it's important for us to explain to everyone exactly what all these terms and conditions are. First and foremost, they talk about store and merchandise credit after 30 days. And of course, my understanding of that is that's probably your only option.
So you're not getting your money back at all?
Yeah, essentially, once you've paid, they've got your money. You can spend it again, or you can spend more of it. Mm-hmm. But the circumstances under which you can get a refund are extremely narrow.
Okay. Now, in the contract, they say, well, you can, like you said, you can exchange the jewelry, you can exchange it for something of equal or higher value, and even that can only be done within 30 days of the purchase. And of course, if you're in the islands and you're purchasing this jewelry, how are you going to be able to go back within 30 days and exchange it or return it, even if you wanted to? Obviously, it would be very difficult to do. The next important part that comes up has to do with refunds, because in our case, the woman that we're dealing with, when she got home and she realized that she had spent, a lot more money than she felt she probably should have, probably falls under this one little heading here called buyer's remorse. Could you just explain that a little bit and how encompassing that really is?
Sure. I mean, the exception under which you can get a refund says that you need to get an appraisal within 30 days of the purchase showing a variance of 2 or more color grades or 2 or more clarity grades. So first of all, as you mentioned, the 30-day limitation is quite restrictive. The consumer may have just returned from the cruise at that point. If it's a longer cruise, they might still be on the cruise. So there's not a lot of time to sit back and think about the purchase and begin to assess whether or not it was a wise decision. They then get into the 2 or more color or clarity grades, which, David, I think is more in your wheelhouse. How likely is that situation actually to occur?
Well, slim to none. They found a very interesting loophole in all of this. And what it is that the diamonds that they're selling are actually certified by legitimate certification gem labs like AGS and GIA, which we do a lot of business with.
Right.
So there's never really going to ever be a question as to whether or not the color and the clarity grade are accurate. That's not the issue. The issue is you just paid 5 times more money for that piece.
Than you should have.
Exactly. So first of all, one of the things that they say in here, and Dave, you and I discussed this for a minute, and Rachel certainly understands this, you have to go to an independent, and this is the key word, independent accredited jeweler or appraiser.
Appraiser, not a jeweler, right?
Exactly.
They can't even be a jeweler. They can't buy or sell. They can't handle jewelry at all other than appraising it.
Yeah, and how many people in the state of New Hampshire are in the jewelry business just for the purpose of doing appraisal work that you know of?
0.
Yeah, exactly. and maybe there's 1 or 2 in all of Massachusetts that do this. So in order to meet just the beginnings in terms of the conditions of wanting a refund, you would have to somehow find somebody who just does appraisals for a business, which is very difficult to do.
Which is a huge red flag on here to begin with.
It is to someone like us, but the average person would think,
would have no idea.
Yeah, they would say, a jewelry appraiser. Well, how difficult can that be? Well, they
Right.
go to jewelry stores and they think that's okay. And then they say, no, it's got to be somebody independent. And they say, okay, I'll go and Google it. Guess what? There's nobody that does it.
Right.
And that's the problem. So, or there are very few people who do it. So now you've got to spend hundreds of dollars to take this item out and have it reappraised, only to find out that, of course, the value is going to be considerably lower, but the way that it's graded is going to be accurate. And we'll come to the lower value part in a minute. But just again, to go back to the buyer's remorse side, here's where we're just even talking about, even before all the grading comes along, Dave, just the buyer's remorse part, which I have seen for years, but just still drives me crazy when I see it, is, hey, you get home, you say, you know what, I think I don't like it, or I made a mistake. I was, maybe just, I was overcome with joy, or maybe I had too many drinks on the cruise,
that happens.
Which is probably more likely. But anyway, so you can't even return it just because. That's kind of the feeling I get, right? Buyer's remorse. That means just because you're unhappy doesn't mean right?
That's what they're saying. Yeah.
Exactly. And the point you make about the rarity of independent appraisers isn't something I knew about. I'm not in this industry when I was reviewing the contract. It's just another hurdle for the consumer when looking at these terms and conditions. So they not only have to parse these terms, they have to have enough knowledge of the industry to know what you just explained.
Excellent. Yes. Very, very true. So assuming that we know from experience, and we had this experience with Elaine, that there's no way that she's going to be able to get an appraisal that's going to help her in that regard. And then we come down to some of the additional conditions that are in here that apply to her. It just so happens that the diamond that she purchased was a uniquely cut diamond, what they call a branded diamond. And because of that whole conditions area of going to an independent appraiser and all this other stuff kind of goes out the window. And now she's into a whole different set of terms. And this one talks about having to take the jewelry now to an appraiser that has been chosen actually by the cruise line or the jewelry store to have them do it. So it seems a bit unfair.
Right. My impression is that these jewelers that are selling these diamonds in the overseas, or where is it?
In the islands,
the islands, they are paying out these certain appraisers to appraise it how they want them to.
That's exactly right. What they're doing is they're going to independent appraisers, if you will, and they're saying, "Hey, join the club. Here's our special, whatever it's called. I can't even think of the name of it.
I know.
The Royal Diamond," and they say, "Yeah, we'll appraise it for you, but we can't use the price sheets that we use for grading diamonds in the jewelry industry. We can only use the Royal Lights pricing sheet that they gave them with the appraisal. So that you can't even go and get an appraisal with an accurate value on it, even if you wanted to,
Right?
because they're going to use a separate price list that the cruise line and the jewelry store has provided to the appraiser that they pick to do the appraisal work." Does that? I think
right. It takes it beyond even having to find an independent appraiser, and now you have to use an appraiser affiliated with the very company that you're challenging in attempting to get a refund.
Exactly.
Yep.
Yep. And on top of that, after you've done that, so now let's say you've taken the diamond to one of their people, and their people come back and they say, "Oh, well, the grading's correct because it was graded in the gem lab, and the value's correct because you gave us a price list and it matches what you told us to tell you, so that's going to be great." But even if, let's say the jeweler decides that, you know what, I'm not going to use this price list. I'm going to appraise it for what it's really worth. Then, of course, the cruise lines and the jewelry stores have already anticipated this is going to happen. So now they throw in probably one of the most egregious, in my opinion, clauses in this entire terms and conditions, and that has to do with value discrepancies. And I just want to read this to you, or just an excerpt from it. "You hereby acknowledge and agree that you have not relied upon this appraisal in making your purchasing decision." So this is the appraisal that they received while they were in the islands that said their ring was worth $30,000. They're saying, you know what? You didn't rely on this, or you shouldn't have relied on this in order to purchase this diamond. "Due to the extreme subjective nature of appraisals, refunds will not be issued due to discrepancies in value." So basically, go ahead. I like the way Dave responded to this when we spoke earlier.
Yeah, it's pretty astonishing. They're saying that they advertise the jewelry as having a certain value, but then they tell you that valuation is meaningless and you're not to rely on it. I have a hard time envisioning a circumstance where a consumer would be presented with a valuation while making a purchasing decision and would not be influenced by that valuation.
Yeah, can you imagine going to buy a new car and they tell you it's worth $30,000?
Right.
And then when you leave, they say, "Well, we just kind of said it was worth $30,000.
I mean, this entire thing is red flags. I mean, the whole time I read it. So I think the problem is that these customers aren't reading it at all. I mean, I don't know if it's red flags just because I'm in the industry and reading it, I'm like blown away. But I feel like even if I wasn't and I really read through this, I'd be like, something just doesn't seem right. So are they just not reading these terms and conditions? Because this is awful.
Well, let's look at it, from a practical point of view. And we all do this, and Dave and I spoke about it earlier. Really, none of us stop and read every
Never.
term.
I click agree on everything. I have no idea what I've signed off on because I've signed my life away just agreeing to everything without reading them.
Perhaps, and shame on us for doing that.
Right.
But that's just human nature. But on a lot of things that we agree to, that's not usually for things that are purchases, $20, $30, $40, $50,000 type items
right.
either. They're for buying an app or doing something else or buying a dishwasher or a washing machine. But but something like this, when you're investing again tens of thousands of dollars, or even if it's $7,000 or $8,000, depending on your situation, it could be all the money in the world to you.
Right.
It's a very serious situation.
What's up, Gems fans? Hope you enjoyed part 1 of our interview. Next Sunday, in part 2, David and Rachel will discuss more of the disturbing terms and conditions in this contract with Attorney Glod.